Good evening, everyone. We're just gonna go into this. We're gonna do a little different tonight, all right? And the reason why is because Pastor's not here tonight, and I'm gonna just try to stand on the wall for him. Um, Now it's funny because when on Sunday, I felt like there was like this high in the sense of the word that he had given, and then he asked me to prepare for today, and it was funny because I was still stuck on it. Right? Anybody ever get stuck on a word? And so as I got stuck on it, I started to think about um, my daughter, and she's being honored tonight, and so we have Sister Kathy standing in for her doing a live stream, and this is awesome, right? And so I started also thinking about the conversations that me and my daughter have, and how much closer we've gotten. And as I started thinking about it, and thinking about the message from last week, it had me stuck here. 2 Corinthians 5:16. So we have stopped evaluating others from a human point of view. At one time, we thought of Christ merely from a human point of view. How differently we know him now. Right? How differently we know him now. How differently we understand our kids now. How differently we look at the world now. Right? And as I started thinking about that and thinking about the conversations that me and my daughter have had in the past, I started also to think about this other conversation that must have had to happen, in the Old Testament. And I want you to see it, okay? In Genesis 22, sometime later, God tested Abraham. He said to him, "Abraham, here I am," he replied. Then God said, "Take your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on a mountain I will show you." Early the next morning, Abraham got up and loaded his donkey. He took with him two of his servants and his son Isaac. When he had cut enough wood for the burnt offering, he set out for the place God had told him about. On the third day, Abraham looked up and saw the place in the distance. He said to his servants, "Stay with the donkey while I and the boy go over there. We will worship, and then we will come back to you." Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering and placed it on his son Isaac. And he himself carried the fire and the knife. As the two of them went on together, Isaac spoke up and said to his father, Abraham, "Father." "Yes, my son," Abraham replied. "The fire and wood are here," Isaac said. "But where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" Right? And in that conversation, it had me a little bit tripped out when I think about it, right? Because have you thought about in this conversation and everything that transpired after it, how that conversation must have been when he got back home with his mother? All right, stay with me, stay with me. Abraham answered, "God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son." And the two of them went on together. Isn't that trust? Isn't that love? Like when you feel as though you're protected by your father and your mother, there's nothing that you won't do when they tell you to do it. It's something to that. It truly is something to that. And so when they reached the place God had told them about, Abraham built an altar there and arranged the wood on it. He bound his son Isaac and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. Then he reached out his hand and took the knife to slay his son. Now this is God's mercy shown time and time again. But in this moment, but the angel of the Lord called out to him from heaven, "Abraham, Abraham." "Here I am," he replied. "Do not lay a hand on that boy," he said. "Do not do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son. Abraham looked up there and he saw a ram in a thicket, and he saw a ram caught by its horns. He went over and took the ram and sacrificed it as a burnt offering instead of his son. Abraham called that place, the Lord will provide. And to this day it is said, on the mountain of the Lord will be provided. So think about this true conversation that must have been had once Isaac and Abraham got back home. Now I want you to see this in a different way.
So we just not gonna talk about the fact that you were about to assassinate me? Come on, little man. I knew God was gonna save you. No, you did not know that. Yes, I did, and you knew it too. That's why you were so good with going along with it. Alright. But you didn't think for a second that I was gonna feel that dagger in my body, like that was gonna hurt. That's tough. Come on, that's real tough. You gonna have to let it go. I'm all for the whole father of faith thing you got going on, but that was intense, man. Got to see it through my body, man. Got to see it through. I respect that though. I respect that. Now we just gotta figure out how we gonna explain this to your mother. We? What? You speaking French? Come on, bro. We in what? 2000 BC? There ain't no French in these parts, my man. That's all you, bro. I guess I'm gonna have to see for myself. That's right.
It's so it's a comical way to look at it, right? But in that moment, you could feel as though like God is playing Squid Game with our lives, right? Just to see if there's enough sacrifice there. But what's interesting about that moment is that we take for granted what love is at times. We take for granted what sacrifice is at times. Because in this moment, we understand what it is to truly worship. See, Pastor spoke about consecration, right? This is consecration, right? But even with that, I want you to see it. The power of the altar is in who the sacrifice is truly to. Because in Lenore right now, in our community right now, we're taking a pause. There's a moment in which we're all stopping right now because we were jarred to our core, right? And everybody's talking about it, but nobody is talking about sacrifice. Nobody's talking about that. We're talking about the pain, the grief, but what about the sacrifice? Because in who you sacrifice to, that's who you worship. That's who you truly worship. And so we can look at it when it's God at the throne and at the altar, and it's okay to sacrifice to him. But what happens when in this moment that Isaac is having, he says, fire and wood are here. But where is the lamb for the burnt offering? See, when we ourselves, when we worship ourselves as parents, and we know that we have to come first, no matter what happens. Isaiah 23:9, the Lord Almighty planned it, to bring low the pride of all glory, and to humble all who are renowned on the earth. The problem with you idolizing yourself is, if you're the ultimate authority, your ability to empower your child to make the wrong and right decisions are based on you knowing that they did something wrong given the opportunity, because you're not omnipresent, and they know you're not. But if God is on the altar, he is the supreme authority, and it is with your child at all times, and they know this, right? So stay with me on this. And so if, let's say, you worship illegal and legal drug use, and your child is with you on a consistent basis, and they know that they're hungry, it's been a long day, they came home from school, and all they're looking for is a meal, but you know you got to get a fix, and you know that you're down to your last $6, there's nothing in the cupboard, and you put your child in the car, your child's stomach is growling, he knows where you're going. And he says in that moment, Mommy, Daddy, where's the lamb? You know, I see the sacrifice you're about to make. I see it, right? Because you have nothing but $6. I'm hungry. But the sacrifice that's going to be made is to your God. And so who is your God in that moment? Right? Is your worship your anger? Right? And so regardless of what's happening around, when your children are paying attention to it, truly paying attention to it, and you're just going at each other, and they see, in fact, and they ask, where's the lamb? See, when your child sees the fire and they see the wood, and they're looking around and wondering, where's the lamb? They already have the answer in their heart. But today we have to start asking ourselves, truly, as a community, who do we worship? The fire and wood are here, but where is the lamb? Money. 2 Corinthians 12 and 14. Here for the third time I am ready to come to you. This is what Paul's saying. And I will not be a burden, for I seek not what is yours, but you. For children are not obligated to save up for their parents, but parents for their children. And so when they know, in fact, that they have a savings account, and they go and ask you for something from it because, in fact, they need a new pair of sneakers, and they've saved up all year their allowance, and they come to you, do they ask at that point, where's the lamb? Knowing that they've been sacrificed because, in fact, there was greater needs that you had above them. Now, a lot of y'all are going to get upset with me on this. John 12:43. For they loved human praise more than praise from God. And this is social media, right? But Jesus is saying something before that. And he was saying it clearly. He has blinded their eyes and hardened their hearts so they can neither see with their eyes nor understand with their hearts nor turn, and I would heal them. Isaiah said this because he saw Jesus' glory and spoke about him. Yet at the same time, many even among the leaders believed in him. But because of the Pharisees, they would not openly acknowledge their faith for fear that they would be put out of the synagogue. For they loved human praise more than praise from God. But this is the thing, y'all. Where's the synagogue? See, if your God is social media and acceptance from other people, what ends up happening is your synagogue is Facebook, right? Your synagogue can be on Insta, right? And this is how you know it is. You've never shared a message where you eat at because you're so worried about the Pharisees, you know, the ones that are actually important in your world. Seeing exactly who you might worship and put you out because there is your worship. Your worship is true acceptance from man and social media. And so when it comes down to the Pharisees, those are the ones that people are truly following. Those are the ones, what do they call them? They call them, oh man, what is the word? They call them influencers. So the influencers are the Pharisees. God is your social media, your world that you live in and exist in I's and O's. And so you refuse to share a message on your timeline because you're worried about messing up someone else's high. Because this is where you worship. This is who your God is. I know you're mad at me, right? But I'm sorry. But stay with me. Can work be something you worship? Not even the money, right? But the prestige of work, right? Where you are within your organization. And so your child is saying, Daddy, Mommy, I see the wood. I see the fire. But where's the lamp? Why must I be the one that sacrificed your time, your attention, and I can never truly have it? What happens when somebody gonna slap my hand after this? But Acts 17:23. For as I walked around and looked carefully at your objects of worship, I even found an altar with this inscription, to an unknown God. So you are all ignorant of the very thing you worship, and this is what I am going to proclaim to you. For God, who made the world and everything in it, is the Lord of heaven and earth, does not live in temples built by human hands. And so how do you know that you've been worshiping the temple? If you've ever taken your child to an appreciation service, an hour, 2 hours away, you already know that appreciation service is not a pastor you sat under, but you do want to be seen, and you take them knowing that they're not going to actually receive anything there. And so you've had them out for 8 hours so that you can be seen, so that the church can give you praise because you worship that organization. And then they look to you and they say, Mommy, Daddy, I see the fire. I see it. But where's the lamb? Because where's the lamb in all of this? Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering, placed it on his son Isaac, and he himself carried the fire and the knife. As the two of them went on together, Isaac spoke up and said to his father Abraham, Father. Yes, my son, Abraham replied, the fire and wood are here. But where is the lamb for the burnt offering? What happens when you worship your spouse? Right? And your spouse is not leading the household based on the word of God. Right? It doesn't matter if it's a man or a woman, but it could be your spouse. In this illustration, he is worshiping his wife. And everything is because I said so. And so no matter what your child does, right or wrong, it's based on what your spouse says. There's nothing biblical about the instruction that they're providing. And you say, just because they said so, it's got to be right. It's got to be. They get the big piece of the chicken, no matter what. Right? I said all of this to get to this point, though. Right? Because we've all been here. Right? Ain't nobody been saved their whole life. So what happens when it happens, right? When Christ comes down and pulls you out of the worship of other things that aren't him, and the knowledge and the understanding and the wisdom comes upon you, what happens? Colossians 1:21-22. Yet now hath he reconciled in the body of his flesh through death, to present to you holy, unblameable, and unreprovable in his sight. You know I was going to steal it from you, Pastor, right? And so when this happens, when this truly happens, what happens? This means that anyone who belongs to Christ has become a new person. The old life is gone, a new life has begun. But this is where a lot of us end up. But your child still remembers your other sacrifices of them. So what do you do? What do you do when your child knows that there was something on your altar before, and they've strayed away because they're so confused because they've seen how hard you went for that God. And now you proclaim this one. What do we end up doing? We end up overcorrecting. The overcorrection happens, right? And what happens when you overcorrect, right? You disregarded this little person for so long to the point where now you realize that they're there. and you realize that there was a love that you wasn't providing them this whole time. You overcorrect. And what does that look like? Who's the boss now after the overcorrection? Our kids end up being the boss. Because this is what we do. In order to correct, we shower them so much that we start to actually worship them. In order for there to be a correction and we start to feel better about what we've done for so many years in the overcorrection. And so our child starts to sit on a throne. And then we get to the point where every day is a yes day. So that no matter what direction, godly direction, you should be able to provide your child, the only thing you can do is look in their eyes and see the hurt of who you were. And so your mind continues to overcorrect and continuously make everything okay that they do because you know what you did wrong. And you cannot forgive yourself. No matter what you do, you can't forgive yourself. So what can you do? 2 Corinthians 5:16. So we have stopped evaluating others from a human point of view. At one time, we thought of Christ merely from a human point of view. How differently we know him now. How differently we know him now. But what about that child that knew you from a human point of view? So are we now, in order for us to get our young people in a place in where they can truly forgive us, are we showing them Christ enough to be saved? So that at some point, they can stop viewing you in a human point of view. How differently they would know you now. How differently they might receive you. How differently they might look at your past because they don't look at you merely from a human point of view. I said all of this to say that we have to now start looking to make sure that our worship, our praise, our honor, our altar, that the God of heaven and earth now sits on top of it. And we start to put these other things aside so that our young folks, our babies that are consistently with us, that are watching our sacrifices, truly start to look at us in a different point of view. And so, who's the boss? I ask you that because as Christians, we have to come away from our kids running our households because we think we're proving something to them. We have to stop allowing the world to be the boss in our households. And so I know this wasn't a long message, but I know that at this point in where we are in this community, we have to understand where we are in our worship. So if this message was a blessing to you, please like it on Facebook, share it. And don't share it just because I might have guilt tripped you before. But share it because there's others that are out here in our community, in our lives, that need to understand who we worship and why we worship. Right? As always, this is good ground. So we would love you to continue to partner with us in prayer because we've seen the results of your prayer. And continue to partner with us in finances. cclenore.com/give is our website and where you can contribute at. We also, of course, are accepting via Cash App, which is $ Christ Church Lenore. As I said before, I'm not sure what you worship. I just know that it is evident to your child. Let it be known. As always, we close with our mantra. We have God. People need God. People need us. I need you. Let's go. Amen.